Welcome to 60 Skills. Today what we're going to talk about is the relationship between the planets and astral energy. Now, classically speaking, if you've read books like Barden's second book, Practical Evocation, they'll maintain that most of the planets have a mental level of energy. This is in fact incorrect. In point of fact, the planets largely generate astral energy. Notable exceptions to this are, of course, Mercury and Uranus, which are known for expanding the mental field in a practitioner. However, even then, the effects can be largely astral, depending upon what level the planets are invoked at. If the planets are invoked at an astral energy level, such as at the heart center or the solar plexus, you're going to notice a very strong astral component to the kind of energy being generated. Now, why is this? Classically speaking, again, when you're talking astral energy, this is largely energy that results as an effect of training the breath. So this requires a body. A common phenomenon that occurs when people die is they find that they can't generate energy anymore. And the way they do generate energy is by doing single-pointed focus exercises. Because again, you no longer have a body and you no longer have breath, so astral and vital level energies really can't be developed when you no longer have that. Now, why do planets generate astral energy? Well, they don't have a body the way you and I have a body. However, what they do have is physical matter. And this is true whether or not you're talking about something that has no known atmosphere, like, say, Mercury or Pluto. What they do have, however, is an atmosphere of a kind. So most planets have an atmosphere. This is analogous to breath in a physical body. When you're talking about things like Mercury or, again, Pluto, that have largely been stripped of a breathing apparatus, if you will, via a atmosphere, what they do have is a magnetosphere as a result of radiation bombarding the physical representation of the planet. This in turn generates an astral level effect in most cases. Now, where this is most curious is when you're dealing with Luna, or the moon, because the moon has no atmosphere as classically defined, but what it does have is a magnetosphere based off of radiation bombarding it. In this case, when you're dealing with the moon, the magnetosphere is largely generated by energy being projected by the sun and reflecting off the surface of the moon. So this is how planets generate astral energy. Now, this astral energy gets really interesting because a couple of things happen when you're dealing with the astral. One, you've got the raw astral energy, which is largely represented by what is classically referred to as the spirit or power aspect of a planet. But you also have the intelligence aspect of a planet as well, or the entities that are associated with the planet. And you have the egregoric buildup around a planet involved from untold millennia of worship and use of these instruments as power and information gathering tools. So this is quite a curious phenomenon. Now, what goes into the egregoric component of this? Well, the egregoric component of the planets comes from people worshiping the planet, giving prayers to the planet, and it adds a flavor to this. This is the reason why the underlying energy of a planet is universal regardless of system, but the particular flavor you get associated with the planetary force comes from that buildup of energy associated with various cultures. So this is why the energy when you're doing a prayer to, say, the moon comes off a little bit different if you're using Hindu yogic prayers versus Buddhist prayers versus Christian prayers or some other pantheon involved with the pagan religions. So this is curious because, again, the entities involved with these different planets are not in fact static. They do change over time. Now, these change very slowly. Why, again? Because of the egregoric component. The people giving worship or prayers or working mantras associated with the planets change over time. Now, this is a very slow change, and because there's this massive buildup from people having done this over a long period of time, again, it doesn't change very quickly, but it does in fact change. This is the reason why certain spirits in their original forms may have been beneficent and then later on turned malefic as a result of changes in how society views that particular entity's function. So again, these are things that are spoken about infrequently in older written works. Now, one interesting thing involving astrology is planets are often considered the rulers of a zodiac sign. So, for example, Aries, or Leo, are ruled by the sun. So, sorry, let me rephrase that. Leo is ruled by the sun, Aries is ruled by Mars. However, this actually gets it backwards. The zodiac provides a mitigating factor towards the energy generated by a planet. This tends to make things more beneficent or beneficial in nature. Now again, you're not going to find much about this in written forms unless you go way back to some ancient Greek and older texts. But it's pretty clear that in those texts, they view the zodiac as purely beneficent and the planets as ultimately malefic. It's a curious thing, but again, it can be mitigated. And we see this a lot in spirit magic, where if you generate a spirit at the non-dual level, that area above the head or its Akashic version, the energy of an entity can be fairly clean. As you bring it down into the mental, it gets a little dirtier, but then when you bring it down into the astral or the vital, you can end up with something very different. This is also the reason why they say spirits wear various masks. For example, when you're dealing with a spirit, again, in its non-dual or Akashic nature, it can come across as very clean. But the egregoric buildup around that entity can in fact be fairly dirty. But that doesn't come into play, again, until you get down into the astral and vital emanations of that entity. So why am I talking about all this? Well, there's a method you can engage in known as stacking, where you generate elemental equilibrium at the vital level, planetary equilibrium at the astral, zodiac equilibrium at the mental, and eventually Sephiro level equilibrium at the Akashic or non-dual level above the head. By stacking things, you can bring in increasing amounts of energy. For all intensive purposes, the elements, when done using this method, generate a vital or etheric level energy. The planets generate, again, an astral level energy, and the zodiac generates a mental level energy. Now, whether or not these things are the source of mental, astral, and vital energy is a very good question. But what isn't in question is what they do generate, at a minimum, exist as an analog or something similar to those raw forces. So by stacking them and directing the way in which the energy moves, whether up into the Akashic and non-dual realms or down into the vital and material realms, determines how the energy can in fact be used. So this is just a brief conversation about how you can use the planets, the zodiac, and the vital forces to generate various energies to increase the workings of your meditations, invocations, and evocations. Again, ultimately, when using this method, the planets tend to generate more astral energy than anything else. So if you like the topic of today's conversation, you can go check out SixtySkills.com, where we have a variety of comprehensive coursework that teaches you how to use these things to achieve your various goals in life or to achieve enlightenment. Otherwise, as per usual, train hard and be well.